given to the officer's brutal misconduct, so no one else ever gets hurt, and the good officers can continue being good officers rather than be tainted by the inappropriate actions of a few. If this bothers you as much as it has for all who have previously seen the video, I implore you to reach out to your city leaders so that this receives swift and proper attention. Thank you.
Likewise, I thank you guys all for being here. I am thankful that I'm still here because that evening I was not sure that I would be here today. Throughout the multiple blows and shots fired, all I could do was plead for my life and for them to stop. The scary part about it was all the law enforcement present fell upon deaf ears. I was looking for one hero to step up and stop what was going on. Instead, all I heard was my fiance screaming and begging. As I was giving up hope. Likewise, I was giving up hope. I am still recovering from my injuries and have sought counseling to help me deal with the impact of what happened. Please give this the appropriate attention so that no one else has to suffer the way my family has and are still suffering. The attempts of recovering. Thank you.
Ann, Jeanette, and Francisco are courageous to be here today. And it wasn't easy for them to do that. They're still in fear of even being in this community, even driving past this community down the 99. That's not how it's supposed to be. Our law enforcement officers are meant to serve and protect. And let's applaud those who do so. But let's hold those accountable who put a stain on law enforcement and hurt and damage the public's trust. Thank you.
Will we be able to ask any questions?
Just very briefly. Go ahead.
For those who were saying, of course, this went all over social media, many people got to see it. Many people were saying that, McFarland PD did find a semi-automatic firearm on Francisco, and he was a threat. What do you have to say about that?
I think as more facts of this investigation will come out, it will be readily apparent that McFarland PD, as I previously stated, is doing a substandard job of damage control, and that's all it is. The firearm that was recovered was never exhibited and never found until after the beating was imposed on Mr. Joaquin. There was no awareness of it at any time. That's just bootstrapping and going back as the investigation has continued. Anything to attempt to justify what's depicted on that video, but the video is clear. And at no time were those officers in threat of harm. Those officers were doing harm. And not only to these two individuals here, but to this community. And that's unfortunate. And that's why those officers need to be held responsible.
You mentioned that police wanted to make an example out of Francisco. Why do you believe that they wanted to specifically make an example out of him?
Well, unfortunately, it's an old school way of policing. And that is by fear and intimidation. And that's what happened that evening. They had a large group of people, and they attempt to display it in the news and media as there was a mob. But you saw the video. Nobody was approaching the officer, nobody was throwing anything at the officer, nobody was challenging the officer. It was a pure intimidation play that turned to brutality on Mr. Joaquin. And as that is happening, the rest of the individuals that were there watch that, and that sends a message to them of what could happen to them and what they need to watch out, because McFarland PD will put the beat down. That is not the message that law enforcement should be sending.
Have charges been filed? If so, what are your clients and you seeking?
Charges have been filed for resisting arrest. As for Anjanette, you saw the extent of that in the video. There was no resisting. There was a physical assault upon her, twice, by the sergeant. And once the officer came and secured her, there was nothing more except her screaming as to what else she was witnessing. But they've also trounced up charges that you never see before, that you seldom see, that most attorneys would have to go into their deep book to find. Lynching, mobbing. I urge you to look at the video. Was Anjanette lynching and mobbing any officers in that video? No. That's just padding the charges against her. Damage control. Similarly, Francisco, resisting charges. As he's getting beaten, he's pleading for his life. Both hands are on the ground as the officer continues to beat him with the baton. That is not resisting. And the force that was used, even if law enforcement may argue there was some passive resistance, was not necessitated. You had 2 officers on him already. You had another officer walking away. There was no need to continue that beating. It was done to send a message. And then the other items that were found were after the fact. And that's supposed to somehow justify the beating on the video. It doesn't. It does not. You can tell in the video the officer with the baton didn't know what he was doing. Watch it. Watch it again. And watch it again. And watch as he turns. And he's aloof. And then the only thing he can think of in his lack of judgment is to continue beating Francisco. That is wrong.
Are you insinuating that McFarland has poorly trained officers?
It's clear. The video is clear. And every department has an obligation to properly train those officers. Every department does. And every department has an obligation when an incident like this arises to look back at that training.
Francisco denied medical attention at the time. Do we know why?
At the time, he didn't even know if he was going to make it as they were beating him. He just wanted it to stop. And oftentimes in these instances, the last person that you want to entrust with guiding your medical attention is the law enforcement officers that are surrounded around you afterwards trying to urge you to get medical attention. The trust is broken. That's what incidents like this do. They break the public's trust of law enforcement. Thank you.